Okay, so our audio works. We're reading Worthy by Jada Pinkett Smith. Okay, I've already read this, but then my stupid ass audio came out. Ugh. Okay, we're on page 28, and I'm just gonna we're gonna read this, and then I'll clip in. Basically, you're gonna have to watch the video after this to see my response to it, because I don't feel like I'm not gonna say it all over. I'm just gonna read the part that basically went silent. The idea that girls and women should not play on their looks was ingrained in me from an early age. The most revealing conversation I ever had with Marion, that's her grandmother, took place one day when we were sitting together in the library family room, and I asked about an old sepia tone photograph on the first shelf above her desk. It was of a woman with a baby on her lap and a little girl standing next to her. The little girl's expression was a bit somber, and the eyes of the adult woman were vacant. "Grandmother, who's that?" was all I asked. She took the photograph down, stared at it for a second, and then pointed to the woman in the photo, saying, "That is my mother." And then she pointed to the girl who was standing and said, "That's me." She was so cute in her little dress. Grandmother pointed to the child on her mother's lap. "That was my baby sister, but she died very young." I was immediately sad, but I wanted to know more. Her mother, my great grandmother, apparently suffered from paranoid schizophrenia and was institutionalized in Boston by her husband, my great grandfather. So to break down my feelings about that very quickly, I found it very frustrating that it's possible for a male to institutionalize a woman. If she was like running the street, I suppose, but I gotta say, like, there's just some really weird shit about American society where they continue to feel like they can just like institutionalize away black issues as opposed to like dealing with them, especially the issues of black women. So many people just feel like, okay, if we don't deal with these issues and instead we just like put these women in institutions, all of a sudden the society will get better. There's never really a proposition of therapy. Or even if that woman was a mother, like, do people really feel this society feels like separating black children from their black families benefits society in some integratory way? That's saying that like by removing the black children from their black mothers, their black fathers, all the things, right? Putting the black fathers in prison, murdering off and killing the black mothers, and then hopefully like raising the black children in white society will enable those integrated black children to then matriculate into this white society. That's kind of the big idea, and why like the social welfare system has come so hard to separate and like and how do you say, like, terminate black families without this idea of like the termination of black people in general. um it's a very strange thing, because like obviously you see there are going to be black African families who are going to continue to be black and African, and hold their tribal roots from particular African villages very dear, and they're never going to integrate into white society in a way that's separated from their blackness. Like, they're going to be black first. But if you take black children and then take them away from their families and put them into like white society through adoption and all these other ways, then you have like at least black children who are like socialized amongst white people and who can like talk to and about white culture. It's another thing I tried to say, but I think I got cut off. Like, white society right now is talking about the memoir of like Britney Spears. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think that white children should go read Britney Spears' memoir, but I think right now it's very important for black children to read like Jada Pinkett's memoir, or like Kerry Washington's memoir, because like you are black. And that's important to understand. Anyway, I was immediately sad, but I wanted to know more. Um, when my grandmother told me of her childhood trauma, I couldn't believe it. In my eyes, she had a perfect life. Grandmother worked very hard to give that perception, but it could not have been further from the truth. As an adult, I found out that Marion traveled back and forth to Jamaica during her childhood. During a visit when she was 13, she got pregnant. The details under what circumstances she was impregnated were not clear. But Aunt Karen, the family historian, and I came to the consensus that probably Marion wasn't aware of what sex was. She never gave the impression she had been raped. It seemed as if she simply didn't know what was happening and it was an innocent mistake. The fact that she was so adamant about teaching me at an early age how reproduction worked leads me to believe that ignorance was the biggest culprit in her teenage pregnancy. It would also explain why she felt compelled to become a sex educator in the school system when it was still taboo. It is painful to imagine the shame and rejection she faced being black, the daughter of immigrants, 13, pregnant and unwed, in the mid 1920s, no less. Yeah. She was motherless and her father wanted nothing to do with her, so she bore that child with little to no familial support. That's hard. She gave her baby boy up for adoption and went into the foster care system where she was placed with a white family. While she lived with them, she served as a maid to earn her keep. I have thoughts on that. This is likely where she learned to clean a house so meticulously. The horror of going through all of this as a child alone haunts me. Inside this proud, accomplished matriarch was a hidden history of a little girl made to feel unworthy before I was even dreamed of. The miraculous part is that Marion did not let the poisonous ruin her desire for a good life. Picture perfect as the wife of a prominent doctor and one of Baltimore's most distinguished socialites. This part is kind of interesting. We could keep going just to finish out the chapter. Marion was far from perfect, but she was a woman of worth and a hell of a heroine. She had built her life an extraordinary garden in spite of the past. By the time I came around, she was learning how to live not in her pain or her loss, but in her own self-love and the love of the family she cultivated. Her house was a place of warmth and refuge, but not just for me, but for the whole family. She had created a sanctuary for her children and her children's children, a lasting legacy of love. In grandmother's house, within her handmade haven, I saw how familial love could pull you through seemingly impossible times. I witnessed the miracles of healing in my grandmother's house for her grown children, each of whom, at different stages, needed to return home for a reprieve from the harsh world. The fact that she had to say that is striking to me because I know that is truth. As a black person, you do have to come home at points in time because the reality of the real world hits you, and it's a hard hit. You get knocked down and you kind of need a safe place to fall. She didn't always agree with her children, but she loved them fiercely. Her grace, tenacity, and devotion were constant reminders that no one is beyond the possibility of redemption. This lesson of faith was the greatest gift of my young life. It was here in my grandmother's house, in my grandmother's garden, that life was right. Life had purpose and life was full of love. I heard it in the nightly sound of my grandmother at the piano playing Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata after she put me to bed. As much as I hated to have to go to bed, listening to her play that piece in particular was so soothing. She played it beautifully, and I don't think she could go to sleep without playing it. I know I couldn't go to sleep without hearing it. I wonder, do you have thoughts about that? That's just a snippet of chapter 1. There are other parts that I talked about in the last video. Stay tuned. I'll be reading this all week. All week I have thoughts which I will continue to write about. I think responding to portions of Jada's book in longer blog posts will help me. I think I'm going to go listen to her Jay Shetty interview tonight, and I'll have even more thoughts about what I saw, what I heard, what I feel, what I believe, what I read, and I'll share those with you. Okay,